The Flames. History's greatest secret and key to a future where ships travel lifetimes to bring flames to new worlds. Those who dare to walk the fire can cross between the stars with a step if you can find a ferryman and pay your way across. For most who brave the flame alone are lost forever. May the ferryman take you. The Ride. Written by J.R.D. Skinner. Narrated by Sherman. Part 2.
There was no denying the reality, however, of the purple dirt he tripped onto as he exited. Here, the full heat of midday was in effect, the system's single white star having escaped the shelter of the massive black sphere that hung low on the horizon. Boomer's tongue, used to operating free of input from his brain, murmured, "That's no battle station. That's a moon." "What?" asked LeChance, his grin now thrice as wide as the fugitive had yet seen it. Before he could be provided an explanation, however, he continued, "Actually, let me summon the fellow who runs this shrine. He'll give us a ride to the local booze shack and we can talk things over there." "Yeah," was all Boomer could muster as a reply. LeChance reached into a deep pocket and retrieved a long-distance communication device that disoriented former colonists could only call a kazoo. 6 planets later, they were both cradling their heads with the agony of a night well spent. "You may have great taste in liquor," Boomer was saying, "but your sleeping arrangements suck." To be fair, the synthetic mesh blanket he'd been handed seconds before passing out had done a solid job of keeping him warm on his bed of not quite pine needles, but being awoken by the glare of dawn, even under a red sun, was not his idea of a decent rest. "Moan, moan, moan," chuckled LeChance. "You complain, but it was dark on this planet for the last 15 hours, the entirety of which you snored through." It was then that Boomer noted the emptied fast food containers piled in a corner of their makeshift campsite. "You, been rambling around?" he asked. "Yeah, I may feel like you look, but I had an appointment to go see a lady about a thing." Still working on digesting a variety of planet-spanning spirits and recent changes to his understanding of reality, Boomer opted not to inquire further. They appeared on a space station styled entirely in reflective midnight black. They drank. They appeared at the edge of the feast that would begin the bloodiest war the Faltric system would know for 7 generations. They drank. They appeared in a writhing pile of cattle, only to realize they'd arrived during the great mating of the race of bioengineered centaurs that inhabited the outer planets of Opopia. They drank. Finally, when they slept under the stars, though never quite the same ones twice. 10 weeks, according to Boomer's count, into their apparent aimless journey, he felt he understood the lay of the universe enough to pose a question, though he'd learned to keep it to a narrow scope. "What exactly is it you're trying to find? Immortality?" he asked LeChance. His traveling companion was hunkered low over a fire-heated slab of iron and a loaf of bread. Raising an eyebrow, LeChance made no attempt to hide his chuckle. No, I do want to accomplish the impossible, though," he answered. Boomer, thanks to his emaciated Hell's Angel lookalike, had met more friends in his time since leaving home than he'd perhaps ever known back in Macefield. Yet silence and second thoughts were becoming his most frequent companions. It was not self-doubt that had set in, however, but something he had been missing throughout his youth. Careful consideration. "I've been listening to your pals," he said. "I mean, our pals, I guess. I'm not complaining. The company's been great, but adventurers, scientists, warriors, barely human humanitarians, space cops and space fighters, or whatever you want to call Carblot and his bug folk rescuing people from exploding stars. I'm under the impression that these are all professions that get around. Now, Macefield ain't a breaking news sort of place. You either live there your entire life or you pass through for the night because the coffee isn't working anymore and you need to park your transport truck. Maybe it was the long haulers you wanted to talk to, or maybe you just know something I don't. Hell, I'm sure you know plenty I don't. But everywhere we go, you're always repeating the same questions. Ever met someone who should be dead? Ever heard a legend about bringing people back? Ever heard stories about people falling off the path and being found again? You can drop me off at my place if it bothers you too much to answer me. Or even here, I guess, since there's a jail sentence waiting for me back there. But if I'm on some sort of quest, I'd at least like to know where my Mecca or Canterbury or whatever it is at, Pilgrim. They both knew that, despite his words of indifference regarding his destination, the only reason LeChance was laboring at a replica of toast was because Boomer had spent the previous evening slurringly pining for his home. The fact that it had manifested in a demand for charred bread was simply an indication of how limited Boomer's father's cooking skill had always been. "I'll tell you, but it'll have to wait. We're late for an appointment." Asking how anyone could stroll the galaxy could ever be late for anything still lay outside Boomer's map of the known universe, so he simply ate his breakfast and followed his friend once more into the fire. The shattered glass mountains of Meliana knocked the questions from his brain. 6 weeks stretched to 7, then 8, until, en route to yet another speakeasy, a slip nearly brought disaster. They'd spent the day drinking something that tasted like a highly honeyed ale, and the planet's Trojan stars and unexpectedly low gravity had hidden just how long Boomer had gone since his meager meal. Letting go of his guide, whatever passed as his stomach between stars lurched from his being and into the nether. He should have been lost, as he'd been told repeatedly by LeChance that only a ferryman such as he could keep him on the right path, and yet somehow he managed to recover. Running on instinct and fear, he did his best to chase his chaperone out of the blackness, and LeChance seemed as startled as he was at his safe arrival. "You walked? That's impossible," said the traveling man. He then began to weep. It was the first time Boomer had seen any emotion from his companion sadder than indifference, and it took him by surprise. Standing in a grassy field tucked inside the curvature of an ancient Dyson Sphere's artificial sun, the drunk from Macefield shrugged and enclosed the renegade priest in an elbow-heavy hug. Pops had once broken both of Pete Milgrew's thumbs for some unseemly suggestions he'd made regarding Boomer's grandmother, but the old man had never once denied his boy a tight grip in a moment of need. Boomer found himself mimicking his father's words as well. "The hell's all that, then?" he asked, as Dad had whenever he'd skinned his knee, or fallen from the roof, or managed to get his heart broken. LeChance began walking away from the rough stone hearth that had made their entrance, his shadow dragging behind him. Clearing his throat, he said, "Strange, I've so quickly grown used to traveling with someone again. It's been years. There was a time when I walked with my wife, Tessa, on my arm, but I did not come by knowledge of my talent of my own accord. The people who brought me to the fire, the same who gave me these tattoos, feel I owe 'em service. They had plans for me. I had plans with Tessa. We ran. Got pretty far for a while, too. I almost wish you could have witnessed the scene. We crashed a glider on a listing ocean platform after a 15-minute chase from orbit. She was laughing the whole way. It was what she did when she was nervous, but I could never feel like there was any real danger with that ridiculous tittering around. The net was tight around us at that point, but we'd found an open flame we thought would be largely left unattended due to an impending hurricane. We were almost right. The rain was thick on the deck, and it was bucking upward at a 15-degree angle. Tessa was giggling like grandmother had farted during breakfast. We nearly made it, though. Momentum was carrying me into the blaze. She was holding my hand, and I turned. I saw him just as the heat took me. A temple janitor or a platform technician, who knows? But he saw the blinking lights chasing us, and he thought I was doing somebody a favor by reaching out to grab her. She was slick, though, and his pull was only enough to keep either of us from maintaining a grip. In a second, she was nothing but an echo of a laugh, and the hounds were on me. It was a long while until I could stand still to even cry about it, and by then, I'd seen too much. They say it can't be done, but I'll either find her or someone who knows where she is or how to bring her back. There's too much room in the universe for anything to be truly impossible. I mean, hell, look at you. Another month passed, but come the mornings, the pair found themselves increasingly clear-headed, having just completed an unexpected 2-week stint in the 4th Belfax Militia, serving as ground troops in a war that was no more or less deserving than the same sort of civil war operating on 100 other worlds. Boomer found himself considering his general trajectory. He'd had some practice with star-spanning day trips before the fighting, and he was confident in his control of the basics. Even once they were caught up in it, his friend's story had rolled over endlessly in his mind. He'd spent much of their time ducking snipers and disabling Belfaxian Imperial hunter drones, quizzing LeChance about what he might expect from his newly discovered flame-walking talent, and how he could use it. Boomer was no stranger to a fight, but his experiences beside his fellow rebels had left his string of Saturday push-ups seeming like a child's tantrum. He'd been relieved when they'd recaptured the fire that would allow them to leave the war-torn planet, but he'd also felt something new and as alien to the Macefieldian as the fungal mesa on which he now rested. Guilt. By the time LeChance returned from delivering the medical supplies they'd promised as they made their exit, Boomer had come to a decision. Picking at the spongy gray ground while using his rucksack as a seat, the former small-town boy said, "I think I've got the lay of the safer landing spots enough to run around on my own. And, well, I have an idea. You may say it's impossible, but I think you've made me an unbeliever in the concept." LeChance, having been recently awarded a set of combat medals for surviving some of Boomer's previous ideas, held his tongue and offered only a raised eyebrow. "If he's still alive, I'm gonna break Pa out. I know he's old. I know there's probably nothing still in there. I know it might even kill him, but as impossible as it is, I can't stop hearing his voice on that hill saying my name. He always deserved better, and maybe I can get him back, just for a minute likely, but long enough for him to see things no one else in that shithole ever has. Maybe I could even show him that he wasn't wasting his time all those years he was trying to keep me clear of Morty's." "How are you gonna do that, Boom?" asked LeChance, his voice rolling thickly as he scanned the brown and orange horizon. "I know what you said, but I'm gonna find some wheels, maybe from back at home, maybe from beyond the crust at Traxel 4 or whatever, and I'm gonna figure out how to drive the fire. With Pa. Maybe Muckraker Hill is a 30-second squeal, but there are so many others. Purple Hills, Living Hills, those goddamn carbon hills on Pant that send you sliding like they were Teflon, and there are enough folks who'd call me friend, or who at least owe me favors, that I figure I can get a bit of speed up and squeeze a hell of a run out of it. It'll take a lot of coordination, and it may not last long, but it'll be an undie stainer while it does. What do you think?" LeChance nodded, took a deep pull on the dank wind, then said, "Am I saying it can be done? Nay. But, on the other hand, am I going to tell you that it can't? As Pops would say, Christ on a crotch rocket, no." It had taken 5.5 years of training, arrangement, and second-guessing to accomplish the impossible. Taking his grip from the wheel, Boomer stretched to touch the engulfing flames, even as his free hand wrapped about his father's pigeon-bone wrist. The old man was laughing along with him now, and as they passed into the fire, Boomer noticed he wasn't alone. The tinkling giggles of the woman he'd nearly missed reached him through the holes in the stereo's base. It was not a long trip, none ever are, but it was, as planned, long enough to say everything they'd forgotten to.
Walk the Fire by John Miro. Learn more at servingworlds.com. Theme music, Full On by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com.